Welcome back, kids, to another episode of Sit Crooked, Talk Straight, where we get comfy, we get cozy. Although today, I will admit, today does not feel comfy because I know what we're talking about. But the talk straight part is we stay honest about real life and what we're experiencing and acknowledging women as a collective and empowering each other to step up and live our best selves.
Mhm.
I am Katie Myers.
And I'm Leanne Jameson.
And buckle up, buttercups. And I'm really just talking to myself because we're doing an episode on the word reckoning. What does reckoning mean?
Right.
Because we're doing a two-part. And yeah, oh, Leanne, I'm nervous. I'll be honest, I'm nervous. Like,
Me too. I'm not really sure what's going to come out on my end because we just had a whole discussion about reckoning.
like 35 minutes of like basically, you all know we do our therapy session before we record with each other. Like we right, how are you? What's new? And we check in and like 35 minutes today was like both of us like verbal vomit. And like
It was a lot of just like looking in the mirror, a lot of just truth telling, a lot of like really looking at parts of our life, as we're reflecting coming into the new year. And this is not just for the new year, right? Like we can tie it to that, but just like this is oftentimes the winter is a time for reflection and flow and creativity. So if you're following like the seasons of your life or the seasons, that's typically what it is. But really just like having time, and we've done so many different episodes about just like taking inventory and really looking at things, but really truth telling, like really looking at what is my responsibility, what is not my responsibility, what patterns am I continuing to create within my life that don't serve me, right? Like they don't serve me, and then like what do I want to do about that?
so where this came from really and we actually have mentioned, this is interesting, we mentioned Christy in our last episode, I think.
We
Christy
did.
Wild, dear friend of mine, she did my year ahead spread like she always does, and she said that my like word or phrase for 2025 is like the reckoning. And she's a truth teller, right? And so like I trust and know that if she and I are ever in a conversation that she's not going to pull punches. She's not unkind, but she will not pull punches, and she will not sugarcoat things or dance around them. Like she will tell me the truth. And so as she's pulling cards for the year and each month, she's like, "Oh, babe, like this is the reckoning. Like you're coming to terms with whatever, right? Like whatever was, like you're coming to terms with it." And we looked up, Leanne and I looked up, what does it mean? There will be a reckoning, and it means that people will be held accountable for their actions,
Mhm.
and the consequences of their mistakes will be felt. And I have never felt a more true statement in my life. And I mean, I don't want to do the whole like Facebook post of like, please pray for me, and it be like real ambiguous, and people are like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Because there are things going on in both Leanne and I's life that like we're not going to be like, here
Super
it
right.
is. We're not going to be super transparent because one, we're in it.
We're in
Um,
it. We're figuring it out.
Yeah, we're not gonna make it through to the other side, but damn, are we in it? And and again, I don't mean to be like cryptic and but I do want to just acknowledge like everyone's got shit.
Hmm.
Everyone's going through something. Sometimes it feels really big, sometimes it feels a little bit smaller. But as we were talking about what we're experiencing right now, it is very much for me and my journey, and I'm going to kind of say this, what I shared with Christy during that reading was 2023, and this was before she used the phrase "the reckoning," I think. But I said 2023 was about me kind of like shaking shit up, right? Like shook a lot of shit up. I think I've also used the phrase of like, I just threw a grenade into my life. This is where the pieces land. 24 was a lot about like band-aids and triage and like trying to like not stop the bleeding because but in a sense, like, right, like it was just like band-aids is what I compared it to. And then I was like, 25 feels like there's got to be some turning point, right?
This is turning point.
And she was like, yeah, this is gonna be, and like everything. I mean, and like the whole arc of like the whole year follows this like shit. So she does this reading for me on December 30th, and then the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of January, I'm like, she was so accurate. Like, yeah, we're not even 10 days into the month, and I'm like, fuck, like, okay, here we go. Okay,
here it is.
And there's no way around it.
Yes, yeah. Well, and here's the thing is, and I will say, for me, it has been patterns just all throughout my life around self-worth and relationships, right? Relationships are fucking hard, and I will be a little bit more open, not as much. Again, it's like I'm going through it, right? And thank God. Now, so I was telling Katie's she's like, I'm so glad you have your team and truth tellers in your life, because I know that's what I need. It's, I spent a lot of my life earlier on blaming, projecting, and like, oh, it's them, and it's this, and it's this, and it's this. And over, I want to say probably maybe more closer to like the past decade, I've been really looking internally too, right? I've been taking responsibility for the things that haven't worked out, or the things that didn't go the way that I wanted to, or, and when I get into blaming only, I know I'm heading back down, like I'm scared, there's something happening, and I'm really happy to say I feel like I have somewhat of a balanced, harmonized like approach right now of just like, what is mine, right? The reckoning is really looking at the truth of like, this is my life. It's not just one-sided. And again, there are so many parts of my life that I'm so in love with, and there's also parts that we're constantly working on, and for me it's always been relationships, and I'm really so, which is funny because I'm a woo, I win others over, as far as like strengths finders, or it's like the strengths finders. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but it's like in my intimate relationships, this has always been like this back and forth of just like fulfillment, fear, faith, like back and forth and back and forth. So that's what I'm really looking at, is just reconciling. I feel like last year it was a lot of like this, not reconciling, but the reckoning and the reconciling within myself of just who I am and how I flow, and the comparison to others, and like letting a lot of fear drop away regarding my life's purpose and like my business and stuff like that, where this year it came in hot with relationships, and that was like towards the end of the year and coming into this new year, where this is something that's going to be really important for me to pay attention to, right? I did a lot of reflection of just like, where am I thriving? And then where are the areas in my life that I'm not as fulfilled as I would like to be? And my love relationship was one of them, right? And I know for me, just as and I can look at all of the different, personality styles and different things that tell me like, sex, sensuality, connection, those are really, really important for me. Like, I'm a highly sensual being, I'm a highly sexual being, and I always have been. You can go back to one of the earliest podcasts that we did where we talk about like, when did we begin to sexually explore? So that's really important to me, and like, it's been a very hurtful place in my life as well. So like, how do I continue to perpetuate like distance, and it's so wild because I've done so much shadow work. I want to say over the past like year and a half, 2 years, probably even more than that, right? But it just wasn't called shadow work. It was just like integration, wholeness, and stuff. And when I look at like all accepting all parts of me, that's a big part of me that was to be accepted, was just the ways that I can ice people out. Totally, I can, like, recognizing that, and recognizing how that has impacted patterns within my life too. So I mean, I'm like really calling myself out of just like that self-awareness of the seductress, and this like ice queen that I can be, like all of these different ways that my shadow shows up, and the deep-seated belief of self-worth. And that's where it usually stems in for me. And I know that I'm not alone in that, right? We have culturally, societally, generationally, we as women have been, negated and hurt, and we have this divine feminine wound that we will not be good enough. And that's when it starts coming up for me, and I start distancing myself. And so anyways, that's been my pattern. So when we talk about this reckoning, it's really, I want to look at myself, but I also want to look at the situation. I'm not taking all of it on, right? In relationships and in our life, there are patterns. There are, just like different responses and reactions to everything. So it's like, what is mine, and giving the rest back. And that's where I'm sort of looking at, and even in my journal that I wrote this letter, I'm definitely not going to get into that, but like at the end of the letter, I'm like, I actually say, like, I release this all back to you. Like, this is not mine to carry. This stuff is, that's not, right? So having, and that has led to, we're having a very different conversation this week than we did last week, as far as like Katie and I beforehand, pre-gaming. Yeah. Where, I even told her, I said, I wonder if I'm a little bit more disconnected. But actually, I think I'm just in a very wise space of reflection, because I have journaled, right? I was like, I wrote a forgiveness letter, then I wrote like this other letter of just like, and blah, like this, right? Because I have a tendency to skip over the blah and like the anger and the rage, and I want to go right to forgiveness, which is so funny, because I was like, why don't we do something on reconciliation? And I said, isn't that what you said? And you're like, no, it's the reckoning. I'm like, oh yes, I try to skip over that stuff. Like, no, this is really important.
Well, I want to just comment on like the process of asking yourself and getting curious about, like, am I rationalizing things? Because I think that when we rationalize certain situations or behaviors or whatever, that is typically a survival response, right? Like, that is survival. If we are questioning, am I rationalizing this? Am I making excuses for this? Am I like trying to spin it and make it okay when it's not? If we continue to ask ourselves that, and ask people in our circle who we trust to tell us the truth, we will come closer to the answer and the truth of it than if we just kind of stick our heads in the sand and we're like, oh no, I can just come to acceptance about all the things I cannot change, right? And like, because that's just honestly as fucked up as the whatever toxicity or abuse or whatever it is on the other side of it that we're saying is okay. And so like, that's us owning our part too. And I love the reconciliation aspect of this, because yes, you are one to want to like hop, skip, and jump right to like, let's make it better. Like, right, like where's the solution? And that's such a gift of yours. But like when you said like, so reconciliation, I was like, no, I think of reckoning. And then I don't even really know what that word means. Let's look it up. And so we're looking it up, and I'm like, but here's the thing. I don't believe that there is, let me see if I think this is true. I don't believe that there is purpose in the reckoning if there is not the reconciliation. And I don't believe in true reconciliation if there is not a reckoning that takes place also. I do not believe that one can exist fully without the other. And so the fullness of it is like, we're going to talk, I mean, we're talking about the reckoning right now this week. Next week we're going to jump into the reconciliation and explore kind of what that looks like, feels like, how we allow ourselves and give ourselves permission to forgive and let go and move forward. But like, in order to do that work, girl, we got some work to do here like now. And I read this a second ago, but I'm going to say it again. There will be a reckoning means that people, me, will be held accountable for their actions, and the consequences of their mistakes will be felt. And I am very human. I'm very human. And there's no bodies buried in my backyard. Don't worry, I haven't murdered anybody. But there are definitely, like you were saying, like patterns and things that I've got to look at. I was even like, as you were talking, like the pattern that I find myself in, I'll be damned if I can't trace it all the way back to age 14.
Isn't it? Isn't it wild? And that's the importance of just like this reflection and like the fullness, like you were saying, of, you know, the reckoning, but not staying there, because if we stay there, we're in shame and we go down that shame spiral, where a lot of this work is about shame release. And in order to come to that reconciliation, in order to create the wholeness within ourselves, right? And that's what true, like true living and true awakening is all about. It truly is about this, like just becoming whole and authentic. And you even said, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that like within this year of reckoning, this is the most whole and authentic that you will be, that you will ever be, right?
Yeah. So I said that, so this was pre-gaming. So I take notes whenever Christy does a year head spread, and I took copious notes, and she records it so I can go back and watch it, listen to it. But she said, December, she's like, if I stay the course and do the work, December is this like massive waterfall of like release and the outward expression of the internal work. And she says, you're going to be a new version of you, but it's going to be more you than you've ever been. And I'm like, I read that. I'm so glad I took that note. Like I read that and I'm like, I've been striving for, aiming for, desiring, working toward like authenticity for like the last 15 years. We'll call it 15 years, where I've been like very aware of like, what does it mean to be authentic, and knowing that I wasn't quite there.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel like a finish line by any means. It doesn't mean like at the end of 25, I'm like, oh, I'm so self-actualized and I made it. Yeah, where's my medal? Not at all. But it is a like the promise. I feel like spirit guides and like God, source, divine is kind of like the promise of like, if you do the work, you'll get there. When you get there, you might find there's some additional work to do, but that's just being human. Like there are always layers,
right?
And so yeah, like the thought, like the promise of, I'm holding tight to like the promise of, if I show up and I do the work and I really own my shit and make changes and make amends, because there are amends to be made. If I can do that work, and I know I can, it's just, will I let myself? Will I like honor all of that? That's the question. We'll see. Tune in next week for, right? But if I can get closer to this very real change, yet it be closer to the most authentic version of myself that I've ever been, I'm kind of like, why wouldn't I do this?
Yes, absolutely. And it is like, I mean, when you think about everything that both of us have gone through in the sake of authenticity and finding ourselves and reconnecting with our spirit, we've always found like, yes, it's like the deep, hard internal work of just like self-reflection and self-actualization and and taking responsibility for things. And on the other side, and making big steps too, like taking really courageous steps into the unknown. And I remember both of us just sort of like saying, I can't believe how much better it is over here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I would have never guessed in my wildest dreams, right? That one thing that we were focusing on, or like, it's multi-layered and like multifaceted. But really focusing in on like, what is my purpose, right? And then when we had taken those courageous actions and steps, we're like, oh my gosh, it's so much more than I would have ever imagined, or I could have ever imagined. So I think knowing that from that standpoint too, is that we've done some of this work to be able to take that to the next level. And now, okay, like, let's see where it's going to lead us within this new realm. For me, it's the relationships. Like, how good am I willing to allow it to get? And what does that even mean? Like, I don't even know. I don't even know what that means. So anyways, yeah, that's where we're at. A little like peek inside.
We're with you, ladies listening. We're so in it with you. You have no idea how we can show up every week and talk about our experience, strength, and hope, work that we've done in the past, our professional experience, things that we've read, things that we know to be true, and we're still human.
Yes. Yeah. We're still going through the journey together.
Yeah,
and I would say it's just like I was trying to think of like a couple different prompts, right? Like that helped me to just sort of bring more things to awareness, and really looking at like, is there a situation or like it could be within my relationship, it could be within my career, it could whatever, family relationships, where I need to take responsibility, right, for how this is. Are there truths about myself that I've been avoiding? What have I been doing? What are the parts of me? Who are the parts of me? That I've been sort of just like pushing away because of shame? Or like, when I think about facing these truths, how does it make me feel? Like, there's a lot of fear usually. But if and I think you nailed it, where it was just, you didn't use this word, but like we were talking about blame and projection, and there was something else that you said. If that's happening a lot in your life, this is rationalizing. Yeah. Like, if this is happening in your life, it's time to just like pause and reflect. That was a big one for me, of just like, I kept on externally like blah, 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 like all these things. And I wasn't taking responsibility for how I was holding myself back. And because I had the fears of moving forward, or I had the fears of what's going to come. So, and again, it goes back to what we were saying, like the patterns or the habits in our life. Like, why does this keep on happening? When we say that, we're like, why does this keep on happening? From the victim stance, right? Like, this is happening to me. I'm not a part of it. When that happens, this is an opportunity to be like, why does this keep on happening?
Yeah. And spoiler alert, it's you. If you are asking yourself, why does this keep happening? Why is it a pattern? Why is this on repeat?
Yes. Yep.
If you are not part of the problem, then you cannot be part of the solution, which means that there is no solution. And that's just not the case, because you have choice. And if you are not owning your part, I mean, truly, spoiler alert, if you do not own your part, nothing's
going to change. Exactly. Yep.
Sorry.
Nothing's going to change. So, on a more uplifting note, join us next week. Not that wasn't uplifting. That's empowerment. When we take responsibility, that is true empowerment, right?
100%.
And that is the beauty of what we do, is that we want to empower, and because we feel empowered when we're looking at this. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's like, oh, do I really want to be like, oh shit, man, I'm gonna make my amend, and that's in the moment it's like it might feel heavy, and then afterwards it's so much more. So Gloria Steinem, yeah, exactly. She actually said, the truth will set you free, but first it will make you uncomfortable.
Oh, I love that. What a great way to wrap today's show.
Absolutely. So definitely join us. We don't want to leave you here. Join us next week where we talk about that reconciliation and how do we move through this. But I gave you a couple different prompts to just sort of begin exploring. We will, in reconciliation, this is really a beautiful space where we can rebuild trust within ourselves, within situations, and really be able to find the purpose in what we're going through. So do not miss it. We're super excited to lead you through that part as well. As truth tellers, truth seekers.
We're here for it. We're here for all of it.
With you. So sending so much light and love until next week. Just keep on allowing your light to shine really, really bright. That's what you're meant for. And to create the change that you're meant for, and to really live your legacy, whatever that might be, that fulfillment in the world. So sending so much light and love until next week. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Yeah.